Welcome to everyone that's joining us. We're gonna wait a minute to let everyone get settled in and then we will get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Applied Strategic Planning for Businesses, Part 2. My name is Megan Peasley, and I am the Iowa SourceLink Program Coordinator at the University of Northern Iowa's John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center. Here, we work with the Iowa Economic Development Authority to bring the Iowa SourceLink platform to all business owners. Whether you're looking to start, grow, fund, or even exit your business, Iowa SourceLink is here to help you. We provide step-by-step guides, make helpful referrals to our nearly 400 partners, and house the Iowa Business License Information Center. Today, we are thrilled to be joining forces once again with Advance Iowa to bring you today's webinar. In case you haven't met Advance Iowa, they provide a collaborative, values-driven team supporting Iowa's businesses, experience guides in strategy, education, and transition planning, and they bring a commitment to empowering business owners, teams, and communities. Before we get into today's content, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available within the next week. You will receive a link to today's recording in the same email that you will receive as proof of your attendance. Also, in that same email, we will be sharing the slides from today's webinar. Keep an eye out in the chat box where I will be posting other resources and contact information as they're brought up in today's webinar. Please enter any questions that you may have into the Q&A box located in the bottom half of your screen. We're going to hold off on answering questions that come through until the very end. However, we will use the Q&A box for any interactive content that we have today. So anything that you would normally put in the chat box as an answer to one of Todd's questions, go ahead and put that in the Q&A box instead. Now let's meet our speaker, Todd Hutchinson, the Director of Advance Iowa. Todd holds an MBA from the University of Iowa and received his undergraduate degree from Western Illinois University, also earning a professional certificate in Industry 4.0 from MIT. As the Director of Advance Iowa, Todd leads a team dedicated to providing strategic guidance, education, and transition support to help business owners, employees, and communities grow and adapt with confidence. He's also been teaching strategic management at UNI for the past 4 years, and he previously taught business strategy and leadership courses at Mount Mercy University. Prior to that, Todd spent 32 years in leadership roles for Rockwell Collins Aerospace across a wide variety of functional departments and roles focused on strategic management, continuous improvement, supply chain management, and system implementation. Todd, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're excited to hear what you have to teach us. With that, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Megan. Welcome, everyone. As Megan mentioned, this is our session 2. So welcome to those of you that this is your first view of applied strategic planning with us. And also welcome back to those of you that are here for the second time. For those of you that were here for the first session and for those of you that were not, we do have some links to the presentation on the QR code that you see on the screen now and the slide deck that you can download when you get a chance and would like to view it. We'll also have links that we'll publish for today's presentation as well as today's recording of our session. So Welcome back to those of you. Welcome. As Megan mentioned, strategic planning, strategic management has been a large part of my professional life throughout my time at Rockwell Collins, as well as my time at Mount Mercy and here now at UNI, teaching, utilizing strategic planning at Rockwell, teaching strategic planning and facilitating strategic planning for other companies now in my role at Advance Iowa. That the facilitation of strategic planning is something that's open to all of you, and we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. So welcome back. We're going to talk about several subjects here. We're going to review a little bit from session one, talk a bit more about Advance Iowa and the services that we provide for strategic planning. But we're also going to delve a little more deeply into what is strategic planning, what is its value, and just really high level on a couple of tools that you can use to kickstart your strategic planning process. So that's really what we hope to accomplish today. So we did a strategic planning poll on LinkedIn, and we got some interesting results back. So we wanted to know how much strategic planning was being used by the companies that we're talking about. So we did ask a few questions, and here's what we got back. So most organizations have a strategic plan in place. Others are still developing it. About 65 to 70% of organizations have a strategic plan in place. We also found that 40 to 50% of companies do annual updates. Some wait for major changes in their market or in their business or in the company structure themselves, but about 40 to 50% do it on an annual basis. Some revisit their plans annually. Most revisit them annually. Some do them quarterly. A few even do them monthly. Barriers to strategic planning. So why do those 30 to 35% that don't have a strategic plan, why don't they do that? We found that lack of time was the number one reason. About 40% of companies responded that was the reason that they didn't do strategic planning. And 30% responded it was uncertainty about the future. So it's difficult to visualize doing a plan if you don't know what the future looks like. So that's what we found out. Basically, growth depends, though, on consistent review and overcoming those constant time constraints. You're never going to find a perfect time to do strategic planning. You're never going to feel like you have enough time to do a good strategic plan, but you do it anyway. One of my favorite sayings is a Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So if you're doing strategic planning, if you haven't done it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't. That means you should start today and continue to do it and revisit it. We also looked at, we don't have the links in here, but I'm sure that we can share those later on. We did a couple of business transition and succession planning sessions back in September. That's another one of the areas that we focus on in Advance Iowa. And focusing in on strategic planning for how you plan for succession, how you plan for the transition of your organization. Only 1 in 3 organizations fully integrate succession planning into their strategic plan. And it's an important part of strategic planning. If you think about it, understanding how your business is going to grow, how it's going to go, how it's going to be led is a really important part. Again, best practice on the timeline is 5+ years. Many wait until that imminent change. So business continuity, bottom line, requires early formalized succession planning, and it should be part of your strategic plan. So, just want to touch on that again really quickly. Why is the poll information that we're presenting important? Well, strategic planning is a growth engine. It's not just a document. It's a living process for growth and continuity in your business. Ensures alignment. It builds resilience. It expands capabilities. It addresses barriers in your organization. So there are so many benefits that come from doing a strategic plan. We'll get into a couple of success statistics in a little bit, but doing a succession plan is very important to the success of your business, and doing a strategic plan along with that, capitalizing on that succession plan is very important. We'll continue to talk about that more. Advance Iowa, what do we do? We work in the strategic planning place, but we really focus our business in two areas: in advanced business growth and advanced business transition. So we're trying to help businesses. Think of us as consultants, basically, for small and medium-sized businesses. And we work on helping them grow, helping them innovate, as well as helping them build transition plans. And I'm going to talk a minute about what kind of services that we do in each of those. We go by a couple of different names. Advance Iowa is our official organizational name, but we use the Center for Business Growth and Innovation name when we go outside the state of Iowa. We also, in our business transition, we have the Iowa Center for Employee Ownership. We're one of the 29 state centers in the United States. So we have a couple of different names you might hear, but we all fall under that umbrella of Advance Iowa. What do we do? Again, wide range of business solutions, education, consultations, assessments, trying to figure out where you're at, where you can be helped, where you can grow, where you can innovate, where you can transition. Facilitating networking, other tools. We try to do everything that we can to help businesses be successful. That's our goal in life. Some of the services, I'm not going to go through each of these in detail, but on the business transition side, the Center for Employee Ownership side, business valuations, driver assessments, consultations, worker engagement work, CE credits. We have a course that we give, continuing education credits. So a wide range and variety of transition services. On the growth side, we help with strategic planning, both training and teaching and doing programs and workshops like this, but also working directly one-on-one with organizations to create strategic plans for their business. And we're going to go through what that process looks like as part of this presentation. We also work in the continuous improvement, lean space. We do work with companies on Industry 4.0, Technology 4.0, driver assessments, integration. So, really trying to look at this growth and innovation problem from all sorts of different angles. But those are the kind of services that we provide. Between the transition side and the growth and innovation side, you can see all of the different programs and services that Advance Iowa provides. Hosted and supported in the last year 32 different educational workshops, worked with 215 small and medium-sized enterprises, impacted over 6,800 employees. So, we work really hard. We don't have a large staff. We have a relatively small staff, but we work really hard to reach out to all businesses, all organizations within the state of Iowa. Okay, so enough about us. Keep that in the back of your mind, though, that Advance Iowa can help your organization do some of these things. Strategic planning is what we're going to talk about today, but all of those services listed we provide to companies around the country, specifically in the state. Strategy, really high level. What is strategy? Understanding the who, what, why, when, how for your organization. The why, the purpose is where we intend to begin. We're going to talk about that in a little while. But answering all of these questions when you're creating a strategy, understanding why you're doing it is important, very important, maybe most important. But understanding how you're doing it and how it's going to roll out and how to communicate and where it's going to happen, who it's going to impact. All of those questions have to be answered as part of a good strategic plan in order for it to be effectively rolled out and for the entire company to walk in lockstep toward achieving that plan. Some numbers: 77% of successful companies have established a mechanism to translate their strategy into operational terms. So they not only create a strategic plan, but they translate that into action. 45% of the 800 executives polled reported that their strategic planning processes failed to track the execution of strategic initiatives. So almost half don't feel like they were able to do a good job of tracking their execution. 40% of employees strongly feel their manager really understands. So that's a good thing. Could be a lot better though, right? 40%, less than half, but at least you're starting to see that impact. 65% of well-formulated strategies fail due to poor execution. So you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but the best laid plans can fail due to poor execution. You have to be able to go out and execute. My favorite NFL team is the Kansas City Chiefs, and they failed this year. They had great plans, but they failed to execute. And you can be really, really strong in planning and not strong in execution and not be able to carry it out. I'm often asked which is most important, creating a strong strategy or executing that strategy well. What would your answer be? Think about it for a second. Is it better to plan well or is it better to execute well? My answer is the typical consultant's answer. They're both important. They're equally important. If you don't understand why, you won't execute well. And if you don't execute well, you'll never achieve your strategy. So it's almost a chicken and egg kind of argument. And then 61% of executives feel they're not prepared for strategic challenges they face when being initially put into their senior leadership roles. So that speaks a little bit to succession planning and preparing the next level of executives to be able to understand what their strategic plan looks like and how they're going to be able to impact it. So these are some kind of national numbers, national statistics. 71% of successful, fast-growing companies have a documented strategic plan, a really high percentage, while many struggling businesses lack one. So successful businesses, 71% of them have a plan. Struggling businesses, many of them lack a plan. I'll let you make the correlation. Only 23% of teams feel aligned with their company's strategy. So think about that. Are your teams, do you feel like your team is aligned with your company's strategy? Do you know what that strategy is? If so, do you know how your team aligns with that strategy, is impacted or impacts that strategy? There are a lot of different ways that executive leaders can reach out into their organization to communicate their plan and grow that alignment. Most of it has to do with communication and connection of the specific items in the plan to what an individual or what a team does on a day-to-day basis. So that establishing that connection, understanding the goal, what am I trying to achieve, but connecting that to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Strategic planning matters. Supports sustainable growth, provides clear direction, helps allocate resources effectively, helps you anticipate risks, challenges, opportunities that are out there, improves your decision making, strengthens communications across your organization and outside of your organization with other stakeholders, enhances adaptability, builds a framework. That adaptability is built through being able to adjust your plan by intentional as time goes on throughout your planning period. Okay, delving a bit more deeply now into strategic planning. Before you can beat the competition, you have to understand yourself. You have to understand who you are to be able to be successful. And a unique value proposition will not translate into meaningful strategy unless the best set of activities to deliver it is different from the activities performed by your rivals. So let's go back a minute. Before you can beat the competition, you have to understand yourself. So digging deep and understanding who you are as an organization, what your purpose is, you have to understand that first, and then you have to translate it into a value proposition that differentiates you from your competition in your market. Differentiation is one of the first things that we teach students and teach teams when they're talking about managing a strategy. There are natural laws out there that talk about species and the need to differentiate a species. We'll allude to that in a little while as well. So differentiation is one of the first things we have to think about. What is our unique value proposition? Once we have that purpose, we build on it and create objectives around that purpose. And we're going to talk about some tools to go identify objectives and then strategies that can be created from those objectives to become successful. Once we have strategies, we have to be able to create value from those strategies. Those strategies have to establish value, and then we have to measure results. Sometimes people don't like to keep score because they're not always winning. But you know what? You have to know when you're not winning to know when you have to apply more effort in other areas. So keeping track of where you're at is going to allow you to understand when you're successful, and it's going to allow you to adjust when you're not being as successful as you would like to be. Sorry, I have a little bit of a dry throat today. So, we start from the aspirational and build to specific and tangible. That's what we're working towards. The journey, starting, building the foundation, working through the process, sharing, communicating, establishing where the gain's going to come from, giving clarity to those strategies to people that work in your organization, and then communicating the results. Everybody needs to know where we're at. So it's not rocket science. It's a process that we go through. And you can see it again. Here's some of the details behind each of those bubbles that we showed on the last chart. But that start process, establishing the differentiating unique value proposition as well as the purpose for your organization is the absolute key to start. Then working through the process, sharing, creating those objectives that you're going to accomplish, and then measuring results. So it is a process that you can go through, and most organizations can follow a very similar process. Not every process is exactly the same. I've conducted strategic planning with many different organizations in many different industries, many different types of organizations, and they never go exactly the same. There are different parts that are more important for different organizations, but they all follow a very similar process. And it looks kind of like this when you lay it out on a process map. Same kind of bubbles: purpose, objective, strategies, gain, key results. Okay, but in a little more detail, there's some things in here that aren't shown on this one. A couple of things that I should emphasize. One is understanding your core values. So who are you? Who are you as an organization? What are your values? What do you really value? And then this nice purple cloud behind here that influences all of these different bubbles is the internal and external factors. So understanding internally, what does your business look like? What are the key measures that you use? How do we look comparatively? And then externally, what's our market look like? What do our competitors look like? And then what's the general environment look like? Sometimes we miss that because we tend to focus on external competitors. But if you think about the impact of, for instance, the economic environment in the United States or globally, depending on your company, if you think about demographic shifts that are happening, if you think about legal and other economic factors, all of those impact all companies and all organizations, but they impact them in different ways based on who you are. So we have to understand that kind of purple cloud that's floating out there to make sure that we are defining strategies that not only address our purpose, but address the reality of what's happening out there today. I'm going to hit these really quick, but again, purpose. Why do we exist? Most organizations exist for a reason. Question is what is that reason? And then that understanding that purple cloud is important. What do we want to accomplish? Objectives. So broad, long-term aims, and then down into those SMART goals, specific and measurable goals. What do we really hope to accomplish? So who are we? What's our purpose? And then what do we hope to accomplish? Okay. Next, we would work into strategy. So how do I align those objectives, those goals, with my purpose strategically so that I have strategies beginning to build into actions about how I'm going to go out and perform activities to accomplish those objectives, which allow me to achieve the purpose that I have. Gain or value, how do I align, again, those objectives into a plan? Strategies are a little bit high level yet. Activities allow me to assess that gain, that value. And then how am I going to measure it? Key results, the scoreboard. There's a lot of different books out there in a lot of different ways. but key performance initiatives, KPIs, or um, um, OKRs. You see all sorts of different terminology, but basically what you're doing is you're putting a scoreboard together. How am I going to measure success? How am I going to know that I am accomplishing my plan, which tells me again, am I able to accomplish my purpose? So, what do you do if you are not? Well, you go adjust your plan. You're not taking your eye off the ball. You're still going off and trying to achieve that purpose, accomplish the same objective, but maybe your activities need to be aligned. Maybe you need to do something a little bit differently. And it looks a little like this, we start putting it all together. The big high level, we've got our 5 steps that we talked about in the last few charts. Then we have some tools that we can use that allow us to assess that internal and external analysis, that purple cloud, allow us to begin to put some form to that. And identifying our unique value then that we're going to provide coming out of that is what's going to differentiate us from our competitors, allow us to be successful in our competitive landscape. So let's talk about a couple of those tools now. There's my purple cloud. Again, understanding unique value. So I want to use some tools to go and take a look at that unique value. Upper right-hand corner, Gauss's principle of competitive exclusion. No 2 species can coexist and make their living in the identical way. Okay, think about that for a minute. You don't see 2 different species in exactly the same space at exactly the same time. It just doesn't work that way in the natural world. That's Gauss's principle. Well, it turns out there's a corollary to that in the business world, in the organizational world, that no 2 businesses can exist in exactly the same way, in exactly the same place. One of them is going to be better than the other. And that's going to make the second one not be successful. So that differentiation and then connecting your ability to achieve that differentiation is going to be what makes you successful. So understanding your unique value, understanding how you're different, and understanding how you're going to achieve that purpose allow you to be successful. So how do you uncover that unique value? There are some methods that we can use that help give some form to that. So we can start by creating a roadmap. We can allow our business units to set and realize high priority objectives. We can identify and acquire the necessary resources and capabilities for our business to be successful. We can generate those key performance indicators. But the question would be, how do we do this? How do I understand what my roadmap looks like? How do I understand what my highest priority objectives are? How do I understand what resources and capabilities that I either have that I need to leverage or I need to go acquire to be able to be successful? And then what do I need to measure? How do I understand where I'm at? How do I keep score so that I can either know that I'm being successful or identify where it is that I need to make changes to become successful? So how do we do this? It's not, again, rocket science. These things all make sense, but how do I go do that? How do I start? So, let's look at one tool. One tool would be a pestle analysis. And this is kind of along the lines of what I talked about when I mentioned the general external environment. So I go off and do some deep dives into what's my political landscape look like? What actions and political conditions affect my business or my organization's environment? What economic issues are out there? What trends are happening? What's happening to inflation? What's happening to interest rates? What's happening to employment levels? What social issues are out there, including demographics changes? We know we have an aging workforce as an example. What does that mean to subsequent ages? What does that mean to business planning, succession planning, transition? We have technological changes happening at breakneck speeds, continuing to increase the speeds every day. What's the pace? What are the adoption rates? What's it look like in my industry? What's R&D activity look like? Legally, what legislation is happening out there? What legal system impact is out there that's happening to impact my business? And then environmentally, environmental regulations, resource availability, as well as environmental impact on those resources, climate impact, waste regulations, any of those things that impact my ability to do business. So this is going to help me set up a strategic framework for how my business or how my organization is going to operate in that unique environment. So that's one way. Another way that some of you may be familiar with is a SWOT analysis. It's a pretty common tool: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses tend to speak to my internal factors. How am I good? How am I not as good? And opportunities and threats tend to speak to the external. So what opportunities are out there? What threats are out there to my business and my organization? Looks something like this, okay, when you look at it in total. Strengths, what are my core advantages, my core competencies? Weaknesses, what are my challenges and limitations? Opportunities, what are my external opportunities that are out there to look at? And in terms of threats, what risks and obstacles are out there? You can do this very simply for yourself personally. You can look at yourself and say, here's the places that I'm talented in, or I've developed skills in throughout my lifetime. You can look and say, these are some places I'm not so good at. Nobody's good at everything. So what are some challenges? What are some limitations I have? Then you can look at the outside world. What are the opportunities that are out there? What things can I pursue on an individual basis? And that could be in any area of life. And what threats are out there? What's coming at me or may be coming at me, may threaten my way to do things or my ability to do things. And all of these things, if you think about it, in the back of your mind, they're playing into what are my strategies, what are my actions, what are the activities I do every day to be successful. It's a SWOT analysis that you're performing internally very frequently. So internal, external. So what environment am I operating in? Positive and negative, looking at it both from the good side and the bad side, balanced field. So that's a SWOT analysis. We can also transition then. Once we've done our SWOT analysis, once we understand those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we can play them off against each other. So for example, I can look at my strengths as an organization and I can say, there's these opportunities that are out there. How can I leverage one of my strengths to achieve an opportunity or to address an opportunity that's out there in the market? Likewise, looking at it from a more negative perspective, let's go all the way in the lower right. Let's look at weaknesses and threats. How can I create a plan to go minimize my weaknesses that I now realize because I've done the work to mitigate the impact of threats that might be out there? You could call this kind of a risk management corner of the TOES analysis, but I need to create strategies that not only leverage my positives, but also minimize my negatives to make sure that threats don't take over my business. Thinking about it in this way allows you to go brainstorm strategies that you could take in all of these boxes. And frequently when I work with companies, we might come up with anywhere from 20 to 50 different strategies that you could use. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to address even 20, but 20 to 50 strategies with your organization. But the brainstorming exercise allows you to get them out there, and then you can go through a prioritization process to understand what strategies are best and highest priority for your organization. So it's a mechanical tool. Do my SWOT analysis. Start with my PASL, okay? Do my PASL, work through my SWOT analysis, and then use the TOES analysis to help me develop potential strategies, right? From there, I'm going to start looking at specific strategies, and I want to look at them in a couple different ways. I want to look at a business level strategy. So how do I compete successfully in my particular market or industry, and I want to look at a competitive corporate level strategy. And I'll talk about that one in a minute. But specifically, business level strategies, how do I compete successfully in my market or industry? Can kind of look like this. It's a Porter's five forces. Michael Porter is a very learned and well-documented strategic planning guru, but these are the common types of business level strategies. And it breaks down like this. I can look at focus strategies versus broad strategies. A focus strategy would be more of a local or regional strategy that I'm focusing on a particular area of the country, a particular market type, a particular region, or broadly, I'm looking at my whole domestic market, or I'm looking at the whole global market. So you want to decide, am I focusing on a specific area, or is it a more broad strategy? And then I want to look at cost versus differentiation, high differentiation. You can differentiate based on cost. It's kind of a differentiation strategy in and of itself. But I can have a broad cost leadership strategy. So I'm looking at a broad market and I'm doing cost leadership. An example of that might be, let's just throw Walmart out there. They have a pretty strong cost leadership focus, but they address the entire international market. You can also have a broad differentiation strategy. Those are a little more difficult to come by, but you can differentiate yourself worldwide broadly. And companies that you might think about there would be, Starbucks would probably fall into a broad differentiation, pretty broad market. They differentiate themselves, or they initially differentiated themselves as a very high quality. Obviously, they weren't focused on cost leadership, particularly a very high quality kind of a coffee experience. So you can look at it in those different ways, but understanding who your business is and what my strategy is going to be is a business level strategy look. Okay. Let's take a look at an example. Disney. Probably a broad differentiation strategy, but what is Disney's business strategy? Everybody's pretty familiar with Disney. Centers around, it's got iconic intellectual property. Most everyone, at least in the United States and probably worldwide, grew up with Disney characters, iconic intellectual property, movies, theme parks, etc. Expanding global experiences, driving profitability and streaming now, Disney and Disney Plus, all while defining its market position through strategic integration and acquisitions. So they have a definite broad integration or broad differentiation strategy. They would look at, and we'll go into kind of the product sets that they've got, but they're looking to look at a broad market and then differentiate themselves as the number one in intellectual property in those global experiences and in the markets that they address. The next level that you would look at is corporate level strategy. That's the overarching plan that guides your whole organization. What industries, what markets. So I've got my broad differentiation business strategy, but now I have a corporate strategy guiding my organization. And you might look at different ways that this is addressed. You might have integration strategies, upward, downward, forward, backward. Who am I integrating with in my supply chain and my customer chain? Corporate level strategy might refer to market penetration, market development, product development. Diversification might work towards related or unrelated differentiation. Defensive strategies, when you're maybe in a down market or when your product set needs to be reinforced, you might retrench, you might divest, you might even liquidate in some cases. So there's a set of more specific corporate level strategies that go along with your broader business level strategies. And let's look again a bit into Disney. There's a tool out there called the Boston Consulting Group Matrix, the BCG Matrix. It's been around for a long time, where you put your products and your markets into different quadrants. You'll have some, let's look in the upper right-hand corner here, the stars, the ones that are shining the most brightly, the cash cows, the most successful strategies that are giving you money to drive the rest of your organization. The question marks, you're developing things, the new things that you have out there that are starting to maybe catch hold but haven't quite yet. And then your dogs, the things that you thought were going to work out and didn't. So all of your different business types and your different products can fit into these markets. If you look at Disney, we can plot where their strategies are going. So they have entertainment offerings, they have sports offerings, they have experiences. We can plot where these things fit. So we might pick Disney resorts. What would that be, do you think? You all might have your own opinion. Personally, I think probably their theme parks and their resorts are probably in their cash cow. Those are the things that people really kind of know Disney for. But we can maybe do it like this. Our resorts, consumer products. I guess we put the theme parks into their stars, their cruises, their streaming would be part of their stars quadrant. Dogs quadrants. TV hasn't really worked out very well for them. Their streaming has worked out pretty well. Disney channels, maybe not so much. Question marks. Cruises, may not be stars, may not be cash cows. They seem to be pretty solid. There's a lot of high opinion about them, but you continue to question whether they fit with your strategy. So again, the point isn't to really examine Disney in this short period of time that we have together, but it's to just show you how this tool could look. So I could go in then and say, what do I want to do with these? Do I dogs quadrant? I may want to look at divestiture. I may want to look at liquidation of those. Question marks, I may want to look at market development. I may want to look at product development to improve them, to push them over into a stars or cash cows. Cash cows, I'm going to probably continue to develop their market just a little bit. But a valid question to ask, what should I do next? Once I have my strategies outlined, what should I do next? So if I'm in the entertainment area, or if I'm in the sports area, or if I'm in the experiences area, what would I do? What would I do next? It's always a great question to ask whenever you're looking at any really successful company. What are they going to do next? It's my favorite as a strategic management professor. It's my favorite question to ask students when they bring a company forward that they've done an analysis on is, what are they going to do next? They become successful in the field that they're in. What are they going to do next to stay successful, to continue to push? So as an organization, you can pretend you're Disney if you'd like, and ask, what is our growth engine? What are our experience extensions? What are our steady profit drivers? And what are our declining areas that we want to consider? So again, we're able to look at strategically, how do I want to move my organization forward? Some of this falls along the business lifecycle curve. So, you do have startups that are in, that startup products, startup new markets that are in that question mark category. You do have stars that are in that growth phase. They're taking names right now. You have cash cows, the things that are successful, that are providing money to work the other quadrants. And then you have your dogs, and some of those are products that are no longer effective. Some of them are failing startups, but on the business life cycle, it tends to be the products that you continue to maybe support until they become something that's not attractive. The interesting thing about this is that if you use this curve as your whole business, you want that curve to continue to bounce along to the right and bounce along up, so that you can continue to provide new products, new markets, and continue to mature along that business life cycle. All of this goes all the way back to our framework that we put in front earlier. Understanding your purpose, creating objectives, creating strategies from those, and then how do I measure it? So, when I look at this, I always kind of marvel at how simplistic the process can look. Devil's in the details. It's always how do I get the right strategy, and how do I understand the correct purpose, and how do I understand exactly what the key results mean? So that the details are really important, but the process itself really is not, it's not all that complex. So, back to our story at Advance Iowa, we are really focused on helping small to medium-sized enterprises, organizations, businesses with strategic planning to the point that we're developing advanced strategic planning help that we can give businesses. We are developing some foundational kind of educational opportunities for businesses. We're putting together different ways for you to learn more about strategic planning, topics in strategic planning, how to do strategic planning. And then, we will help any business that comes to us. So you can schedule a free discovery call with us at any point in time, and we'll help you figure out what the right path is for you to go move forward with strategic planning. It may simply be going out and trying to understand your market better, trying to understand your performance in your market, or it may be creating a consulting engagement where we come out and help walk you through that whole process to create a strategic plan. It can be any of those, but the important first step is to take a first step, make that call. So we look at it kind of in a building process. You want to discover, you want to practice, you want to perform, and you want to validate. Kind of along the lines of lather, rinse, repeat, but first you have to establish your foundation. So we have 4 tiers in the way that we look at it, creating that foundation, practicing, performing, and then validating. And if I just dig into tier 1 for a second, that foundation builder, I have some different things that I do. I get started, I create my journey, my path, my roadmap, understand my environment, think strategically, build a coherent strategy for my business, do it, measure, achieve it, and adjust to what's next. So we do have some help that's out there. QR code there for a strategic planning journey checklist, as well as a really simple spreadsheet tool to help perform a SWOT and TOES analysis. Those are places that you can start really quickly. First thing though would be to give us a call. Again, you can go back and look at the December session. We'll have a similar set of materials that are out there for today's session. You can follow us on LinkedIn at advanceiowa.com. You can get our Suite 128 business newsletter. You can go visit our business hub for download needs. There's materials out there and help out there available. The first step, though, is to take the first step. Keep the conversation going. QR code link to our Iowa CEO or our Iowa CEO website, our Advance Iowa website, and then our Iowa SourceLink website. So, so that's what I've got. Thank you very much. We have a little bit of time for a couple of questions here. Bottom line for me here, though, is we're here to help you. And if there are any needs that you have, all you have to do is contact us through that website or pick up the phone and give us a call, and we're there to help. So with that, we'll go to Q&A. And Megan, you can come back and take over and lead that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you so much for all this information. It was very educational, and I learned a lot personally from listening to all of that. Just like Todd said, if you have any questions, we are opening the floor up for Q&A. The Q&A box should be located on the bottom half of your screen. We don't have any questions that have come through yet, Todd, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you the one I always do whenever you do one of these webinars with us. So you said first step should be to contact you guys. But what is the biggest takeaway you want people to take away from what they learned today?
Biggest takeaway I'd say is twofold. First is strategic planning is done correctly. It's valuable. And it's not scary. It's a process. It isn't rocket science, it isn't nuclear physics, it isn't any of that stuff. It's a process that you can be led through and it will provide high value to your organization. What was the statistic I showed earlier? 70% of successful businesses have a strategic plan, 71%. Any other questions? Come on. You got me. Stump. So one that might relate to Iowa SourceLink type businesses is I'm a small business. Is it really important that I do a strategic plan? I'm fighting every day just to make sales and find leads and um, is strategic planning really important for me? And my answer to that question is I'll answer it with a question. If you want to go somewhere, do you look at the route before you go, or do you just hop in the car and start driving and hope that eventually you're going to reach the destination that you're trying to get to? If I want to go to Minneapolis and I start driving south, I'm not going to get there very quickly. And it's going to get really, really cold when I drive over Antarctica and drive back around the other side and have to drive over the North Pole to finally get to my destination. I'll have given up long before that point. The strategic plan doesn't have to be that complicated. It can be, you can do it, you can start a strategic plan in an afternoon. In fact, if you're a small business startup and you have a business plan, my guess is a lot of the thinking that you would do in strategic planning has been part of what you've done for creating a business plan. Other questions?
We haven't had any come in yet.
Okay.
Oh, there we got one now. How does the decrease in available workforce in the US impact the strategic plan? Specifically talking about international outsourcing.
Oh, it really kind of depends on your business and your market. I'd have to know more about the situation you're describing, I think, to answer the question. In general, reduced workforce is a factor that's out there that you have to plan for. So if you know that's happening, then you plan for it. And that's a really weak answer because you really want to know how am I going to plan for that. But do I need to further automate? Do I need to utilize AI? Do I need to invest in resources directly? Do I need to look for resources in different places? You'd have different strategies that you might enact once you understood that that's a factor that's impacting your ability to be successful with the organization. I'm not sure if that answered your question. If it didn't, please ask another one.
We did have someone raise their hand and then lower it. If that was you, we don't have the ability to have you come off of mute because of how the webinar is set up, but you can put a question in the Q&A, and I can read it off to Todd for you. Um, we're not, it doesn't look like we're getting any more Q&A. Todd, do you mind going back to the last slide so we have that contact information for Advanced Iowa again? Or I guess it was 2 ago, sorry. So on the screen is Advance Iowa and the Iowa CEO and Iowa SourceLink's contact information. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. All of us are more than happy to help you get the resources and connections and answers you need to help you through that question. Um, if we don't have
I
any
just,
more,
just say
go
one
ahead,
more.
Tom.
It is not intimidating to get started. It takes a phone call and we can ask a couple of quick questions and figure out what we need to do. So if you have any desire to start a strategic planning effort at your organization, please reach out. We'd be happy to help.
Great point. Okay, if we don't have any more Q&A, I'm gonna go ahead and end us out, Todd, unless you have any other comments you want to end us with.
I'm good. Thank you all very much for attending. It's been great to be with you today, and 'tis the season, so everyone have a great holiday and a great winter break.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Todd, for presenting all of this information for us today. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be available to watch on Iowa SourceLink's website or by searching Iowa SourceLink on YouTube within the next week. If you would like to learn more or schedule a consultation with Advance Iowa, we will share this presentation file and the recording via email. All of their contact information will be included in that email. And with that, that is a wrap on the 2025 webinar series for Iowa SourceLink. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in this year and to all of our presenters. To stay up to date on the 2026 webinar series, follow Iowa SourceLink on social media at Iowa SourceLink on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We will announce on those platforms the upcoming webinar schedule. In the meantime, visit iowasourcelink.com for free small business resources. Thank you all for joining us and have a great holiday season.
Thank you very much.